What happens when a black woman CEO is told to give up her business class seat for a white passenger with less status? Most would expect silence or compliance. But Dr. Naomi Delaney was anything but silent. On Artemis Air Flight 604, a routine journey quickly turned into a powerful confrontation, not just over a seat, but over the very idea of belonging. Who has the right to claim space? What happens when systems built on assumption meet a quiet but unshakable force? And can patience and dignity truly dismantle a lifetime of bias? As tensions rise and cameras roll, Naomi's calm resolve exposes uncomfortable truths hidden behind airline protocols and social prejudice. This is more than a flight delay. It's a reckoning. A moment that asks us all, how many times have we been told we don't belong, and how far would we go to prove that we do? If you're tuning in from anywhere from New York to Nairobi, from Atlanta to Oakland, drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. Hit like, share this story, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss a story that challenges the silence and shines light on the truth. Let's begin. The hum of fluorescent lights overhead did little to ease the chaos at Gate B12. Over in the corner, a man barked into his phone while a toddler sobbed into a sleeve. Someone near the charging station spilled coffee. It was the kind of Thursday afternoon where the air didn't feel like it was moving and tempers simmered right under the surface. But Dr. Naomi Delaney didn't notice any of it. She stood in line for Group 1, boarding pass in hand, a black leather satchel draped across her shoulder. Her hair was pulled back into a simple low bun. Her suit was soft gray wool, tailored but unflashy. The only thing that hinted at status was the quiet watch on her wrist, a thin, gold Patek Philippe. No logos, no ostentation, just weight. As they called Group 1, Naomi stepped forward calmly. The gate agent scanned her pass, barely looking up, and gestured her through. The jet bridge smelled faintly of jet fuel and filtered air. She walked slowly, not because of age or stiffness, but because she believed in never rushing into confined spaces. Years of biotech boardrooms and federal advisory panels had taught her that presence wasn't just about being there. It was about taking space without apology. She stepped onto Artemis Air Flight 604 and made her way to seat 2D in the business class cabin. Second row, aisle seat, a comfort she had paid for not just with money, but with years of knowing exactly what she wanted and refusing to settle. The seat was empty. She placed her satchel under the seat in front of her with precision, not hurried, not hesitant. Then she folded her long coat across her lap and leaned back, exhaling slowly. She pulled out her notebook, a cloth-bound journal with no branding, just cream-colored pages and careful handwriting, the kind of notebook where ideas became systems. The cabin wasn't full yet. A few passengers shuffled down the aisle. One man in an oversized hoodie accidentally bumped her arm, muttered an apology. She nodded silently and went back to riding. And then came the voice. "Excuse me," a man said. His tone had that edge, the kind sharpened by assumption. "I think you're in my seat." Naomi looked up slowly. A tall white man stood over her, blazer slung over one arm, designer briefcase in the other. His face was pink with irritation. "This is seat 2D, he added, like she might not know the alphabet. Naomi kept her voice even. "Yes, that's what my boarding pass says." He gave a tight chuckle. No, there's been a mistake. I booked this seat." Naomi didn't respond immediately. She placed a small bookmark between the pages of her journal. closed it gently, and looked at him directly. Then, I'm sure the flight crew will clear it up. The man turned, already gesturing to the nearest crew member, a young woman in an Artemis uniform with a nervous smile. Hey, can we check this? She's in my seat. The crew member glanced between them, then reached for her scanner. She was about to speak when another figure joined them. Megan Talcott, the gate agent, now in the aisle with a handheld scanner and a clipboard. Her blonde ponytail was slightly frayed at the edges. She looked rushed, but polite. "Ma'am," Megan said to Naomi, forcing a tight smile, "I just need to confirm your seat." Naomi handed over her boarding pass without a word. Megan scanned it, then frowned. The man behind her leaned over slightly. "Told you." Megan looked at the screen again. Her frown deepened. She didn't hand the pass back right away. "Name, Dr. Naomi Delaney," Naomi replied calmly. Megan looked again. The name matched. Seat 2D, no flags, but she hesitated. "We've had some system glitches today," she said, a little too quickly. "There's a duplicate reservation. We might need to reseat you for now while we sort it out." Naomi folded her hands over her journal. "No, thank you," she said. Megan blinked. "Excuse me." Naomi's voice was still gentle, still composed. "I'm sitting in the seat I paid for. My pass is valid. If you need to verify, I suggest you do so. I'll wait." The man with the briefcase scoffed. "This is ridiculous." Another crew member, Logan Price, entered the scene. Mid-30s, pressed uniform, confident swagger. "What's the problem? She's in my seat." The man snapped, pointing, "But she's refusing to move." Logan turned to Naomi, not unkindly, but with that default tone of authority. "Ma'am, can I ask you to step aside for a moment while we confirm the manifest Naomi didn't move?" "Why would I need to move from the seat I was assigned?" she asked. Logan gave a patient smile, the kind designed to placate. "We've just had some recent upgrades. Maybe something shifted." Naomi looked him in the eye. "Would you ask me to step aside if I look like him?" she said, gesturing toward the man. The smile cracked. "Just a little." "I'm not implying anything," Logan said quickly. "We just need to be thorough." "Then be thorough," Naomi said. "But I will not be moving until your system catches up to the truth." Behind her, in the third row, a young woman wearing large headphones and box braids slowly lowered her phone and hit record. In the first row, a man in a charcoal blazer looked over his shoulder. In the galley, Megan turned to Logan, whispering, "We should verify this before this gets worse." Logan nodded, took the scanner, and walked back toward the jet bridge. Naomi remained seated. Her shoulders relaxed, her jaw unclenched, but inside, something shifted. Not fear, not even anger, just that quiet, cold understanding that some people didn't care how much you paid, how quietly you carried yourself, or how far you'd come. If you didn't look like what they expected, they'd assume you didn't belong. She had seen it in conference rooms, in investor meetings, at the edge of every velvet rope. But not today. Not in 2D. She glanced toward the aisle, where Megan was now whispering again. Then she opened her journal, turned to a fresh page, and wrote Flight 604, Artemis Air, boarding 1:42 p.m., initial contact seat dispute, language passive challenge, assumption not business class. She underlined assumption twice. Then she waited, not as a guest, but as a mirror. A low hush spread through the business cabin. Some passengers focused on their screens or sipped bottled water. but a few couldn't help glancing over at SEAT 2D, where Dr. Naomi Delaney remained still, hands folded on her journal. The tension wasn't loud. It was thick and quiet, like heavy air before a summer storm. Megan Talcott, the gate agent, stood by the galley, anxiously scrolling on her handheld device. Her fingers hovered over the screen as she whispered, "I swear the manifest said Holden. Why is she even in that seat?" She looked up to see Logan Price returning from the jet bridge, his uniform immaculate, but his brow creased with concern. Logan paused by the galley, holding the manifest printout in one hand and the scanner in the other. "The system's having issues. They said to hold boarding until we clear this up." He lowered his voice so only Megan could hear. "We need to tread carefully. There's a lot of eyes on this flight. You feel it?" Megan nodded, swallowing her frustration. "We have to move her." "Right. If the system says Holden, it could be a security thing." But Logan shook his head. "I'll talk to her again. Just stay calm. Don't make a scene. Back at her seat." Naomi's expression didn't change as Logan approached. She sensed the glances, felt the subtle weight of strangers' judgment brushing against her skin. Even so, she kept her breathing measured and her gaze steady. In her lap, her fingers traced the edge of the journal's cover, as if grounding herself. Logan stopped in the aisle, offering a placating smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Dr. Delaney, would you mind stepping aside while we sort out a system error?" He gestured, trying to look helpful, but Naomi heard the edge beneath the request. She replied with the same gentle, composed voice as before. "I understand you have procedures. I also understand that my boarding pass, my ID, and my ticket are all in order. I'd prefer to stay in my seat until you confirm otherwise." He pressed a little more, keeping his tone polite but firm. "We're just following protocol. Sometimes economy passengers try to upgrade themselves, especially on crowded flights." Naomi blinked once, then met his gaze without flinching. "If I were an older white man in this seat, would you have asked me twice?" The question hung in the air, neither loud nor sharp, but impossible to ignore. Logan hesitated, caught off guard by her calmness and her clarity. He turned to Megan, voice low but tense. "Run it again at the main desk. Cross-check with the supervisor. I don't want this to become a thing." Megan hustled away, disappearing up the jet bridge, her steps quick and clipped. Logan shifted uncomfortably, then forced a reassuring tone for the cabin's benefit. "Sorry for the delay, folks. Should be sorted shortly." Naomi let her eyes close for a moment, listening not just to words but to the undercurrent beneath them. Years of boardrooms, of strategy sessions, of sitting at tables where her presence was both demanded and resented, had trained her to notice these moments. Not the obvious insults, but the quiet disbelief, the expectation that she'd eventually yield, apologize, disappear. She took a breath and opened her journal, letting her pen move across the page. She wrote down times, names, glances, the way Megan hesitated before returning her boarding pass. In the next row, someone coughed. Across the aisle, a man in a blue suit muttered, "Always something." Naomi didn't react. In row 5, Jayla Raymond, headphones dangling around her neck, angled her phone toward the aisle. She had seen enough of the world to recognize when a story was about to unfold, and she was ready. Her live stream viewer count ticked higher by the minute. Logan returned with Megan in tow. Megan's face had tightened, stress leaking out in her rapid-fire speech. We can't find a mismatch. The system says Delaney. There's no reservation for Holden at all now." The man still standing in the aisle snorted in disbelief. "But I booked this seat." His voice was just loud enough for others to hear, and a couple of heads turned. Logan looked apologetic. "Sir, we're sorry for the inconvenience. There may have been an error on your reservation. Please take a seat for now, and we'll address it before takeoff." The man looked at Naomi with a narrowed stare, a silent accusation in his eyes. He stomped off toward the galley, muttering, "Unbelievable. This is why people lose faith in the system." Megan, still flustered, turned to Naomi. "Sorry for the confusion, Dr. Delaney. We're working to resolve it." Naomi nodded, her voice gentle but unyielding. "Thank you. I hope next time your system recognizes that I belong here as much as anyone else." Logan gave her a searching look, as if suddenly seeing her for the first time. He wondered, just briefly, what it was about her calm that unsettled him so much. The cabin settled, but the energy was changed. Small moments of awkwardness drifted like dust motes in sunlight. A mother pulled her child closer. A young man shot a nervous glance at his phone, then at Naomi. Someone in the front row texted quietly, "Something weird's happening in business." Inside her chest, Naomi felt a familiar ache, a kind of old bruise pressed by a new hand. She remembered being 12, sent out of the advanced math class for being disruptive, though all she'd done was answer too quickly. She remembered being 27, leading her first trial team, hearing her name mispronounced in every meeting as if to remind her she was an anomaly. For a flicker of a moment, doubt crept in. What if she was wrong? What if, this time, it really was just a system error? She closed her eyes, breathing through the unease, and reminded herself patterns don't lie. She wrote a single word on the page, pattern. Megan hovered, glancing back at Logan, who was already radioing someone at the front. The commotion seemed to recede as Naomi's mind retreated inward. She weighed her next move, felt the simmer of resentment beneath her composure, the urge to demand more than just a seat, maybe. This time, to demand the truth. But she waited, sitting with the discomfort, letting the moment reveal itself. She would not be the one to flinch first. In the hush of the business cabin, in the tension of unasked questions, Dr. Naomi Delaney became more than just a passenger. She became a test for the crew, for the system, for herself, and outside. The sun slipped lower over the tarmac, golden light streaming through the tiny cabin window, illuminating the words she had written, proof that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Outside the windows, the golden afternoon bled slowly into dusk. Inside the business cabin, the hush lingered, thick and static. The overhead lights flickered as a flight attendant checked the coffee supplies, but most eyes had drifted back to their phones or into restless anticipation of departure. Doctor. Naomi Delaney sat upright in seat 2D, her journal closed, her thoughts spinning beneath a calm exterior. She felt every heartbeat in her chest and every glance flickering her way. Both from the aisle and from the silent world of digital screens now trained on her, the energy had shifted, and she knew it. She knew, too, that the story wasn't about a seat. Not really. It was about who they believed could rightfully claim a seat at all. A low ping vibrated on the phone of Jayla Raymond, now sitting in row 5. She adjusted her headphones, her hand steady as she propped her phone subtly against the seat in front of her. Camera angled toward the front of the cabin. The lens just caught Naomi's profile, the curve of her jaw, the gleam of her watch as she tapped the journal with one finger. Jayla's live stream, titled "When They Assume You Don't Belong," surged past 15,000 viewers. Jayla whispered into her mic, her voice barely above the drone of the plane's air system. "Okay, y'all, business class, Artemis Flight 604, black woman, clearly has the seat, but they keep checking her paperwork. Still no apology, still making her wait. She's not saying a word, but the energy in here, it's tense." Comments poured in. "Why is it always us? She looks so calm. Get her name. Protect black women." The feed scrolled faster than Jayla could read. Somewhere in the back of her mind, she wondered if she should intervene directly, or if her job was simply to bear witness. The pressure built with every notification. She felt the gravity of the moment settling across her shoulders. Meanwhile, in the aisle, Logan Price tried to look busy with the manifest but kept glancing at Naomi, as if hoping for her to say something to help him diffuse whatever this was turning into. He remembered the last corporate training on diversity and inclusion. The consultant had said, "Sometimes the story is not about who is loudest, but about who is never allowed to speak." He realized, uncomfortably, that Naomi was both the silent force and the uninvited story. Naomi closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the vibration of the aircraft's systems beneath her feet. She recalled her grandmother's voice, soft and certain. "Child, never let them rush you out of your own worth." That voice, tucked somewhere deep in memory, steadied her now. She opened her eyes and saw Megan Talcott approaching with uncertain steps, holding a tablet. Megan's mouth pressed into a thin line as she stopped by the seat. "Dr. Delaney, thank you for your patience. We're just waiting on a supervisor's final approval before we can push back. Shouldn't be much longer." Naomi regarded her, then nodded once, her expression unchanged. "Take your time," she said, her voice as steady as ever. "Just remember who waited longest." Megan nodded, a flush creeping across her cheeks, and hurried away. Naomi could feel the fatigue settling in an old, deep tiredness that didn't come from lack of sleep, but from the weight of always having to prove, to wait, to defend her right to take up space. In the quiet moments that followed, Naomi turned to her journal again. She wrote a single line. "Every delay is a question. How much will you bear before you break?" She paused, pen hovering above the page, and let herself remember the first time she'd been asked to leave a space that was rightfully hers. She was 9, at a science fair. Her project on plant genetics set up neatly on a folding table. The judge smiled, shook her hand, then asked if she was lost and pointed her toward the elementary section. Her mother had watched, silent and proud, and told Naomi afterward, "Let them wonder, but don't let them push you." It was a lesson she'd carried to every conference room and every airport lounge since. A few seats away, a young flight attendant named Ellie whispered to a colleague, "She's so calm. It's unnerving, like she's already decided how this will end." Jayla watched through her phone, heart racing. She wanted to say something, to stand up and announce to the whole cabin that Naomi belonged right where she was, but she remembered her own moments of being overlooked, spoken over, told to wait while someone else's comfort took priority. For now, she kept recording, her presence a silent offering of solidarity. The man who had challenged Naomi's seat walked down the aisle, phone pressed to his ear. "Yeah, they're saying there's a system issue, but it's my seat. I have status on Artemis." He glanced at Naomi, his gaze hardening when she didn't look away. "No, I'm not letting this go. This is unacceptable." Naomi heard the words, let them pass over her like water. She wondered, not for the first time, how many times she'd been written out of a room before the real meeting ever started. She felt a brief stab of anger, sharp, immediate, almost blinding. She tamped it down, inhaled, exhaled, and pressed her palm to the cover of her journal. A soft chime signaled an announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are just experiencing a minor delay while we finalize our boarding process. We appreciate your patience and hope to be on our way soon." The voice was smooth, professional, practiced at soothing unrest, but the cabin did not relax. Eyes flickered, words whispered behind hands, and the story began to spread through the plane like ripples on water. Naomi leaned back in her seat, closing her eyes for a long moment. She let her mind drift through old disappointments and new hopes, through every door she'd had to open for herself. In the darkness behind her eyelids, she saw not just this moment, but 1,000 like it, stretching back through her own life and the lives of those who came before. She wondered, for just a moment, whether it was worth it, whether, in choosing to stay silent and strong, she was letting something slide that should be confronted head-on. She wondered if her calm was truly a shield, or if it was a mask, and whether this moment would ever lead to change, or just another bruise no one else could see. But then she opened her eyes and caught Jayla's gaze, steady and reverent behind the phone screen. She saw the hope there, and the need for witness. In that small connection, Naomi found the answer she needed. Sometimes, she realized, the whisper of resistance is louder than the shout. She turned a page in her journal and wrote, "I am seen, and I am not alone." The tension in the cabin didn't dissolve, but it changed. It became something alive, electric. A whisper shared between strangers, an unspoken question echoing in the space between them all. The seconds stretched into minutes. Naomi watched the slow ballet of airline procedure unfold around her, each move deliberate and measured, as if any sudden motion might break the spell and release the tension coiling through the cabin. Passengers adjusted their headrests, sent quick texts, or pretended to ignore the drama at the front. Even so, every time a uniform passed, eyes slid toward seat 2D. Naomi felt the weight of their curiosity, their judgment, and their discomfort. She imagined what they saw a woman seated with such calm that it looked like confidence, or, to some, defiance. Inside, Naomi was anything but unshakable. Beneath her serene surface, her mind ran over contingency plans, worst-case scenarios, and every way the day could end with her being escorted off this plane. She replayed old conversations in her head, her own voice trembling in frustration after a similar humiliation years ago. A white supervisor's clipped tone, a conference organizer's backhanded apology. The memories stung, but she forced herself to breathe through them, refusing to let her face betray her anxiety. She looked down at her hands, laced gently on top of her journal. She saw the strength in them, the lines mapped by years of writing, working, carrying burdens that were never just her own. She wondered, as she often did, whether her restraint was a form of surrender, or if it was the only language the system understood. A movement at the front pulled her from her thoughts. Logan Price was returning, his steps slower now, gravity settling into his posture. He stopped just beside Naomi's seat, his voice pitched low enough that only she could hear. "Dr. Delaney, the manifest confirms your reservation, but there's a secondary system flagging this row for reassignment. It's unusual. I want you to know I'm trying to resolve this, but the final decision may come from above my level." Naomi's lips pressed together. She nodded once, her expression unchanged, but her mind raced. The flag, the extra scrutiny, the sudden escalation, it all felt painfully familiar. She answered, "I appreciate you keeping me informed, Mr. Price, but I'm not moving from my seat until someone explains, on record, why I should." Her tone was calm, but there was steel beneath it. Logan hesitated, visibly weighing the consequences of pushing further. "Understood," he replied, his voice respectful now, almost regretful. Naomi watched him walk away, the resolve in her chest settling like a stone. She would not yield, not this time, even as doubt gnawed at her. What if she was making a mistake? What if the consequences were worse than embarrassment? She knew she owed it to every version of herself that had ever been told to wait quietly, to endure, to accept. At the same time, the unnamed man who had originally claimed her seat continued to mutter loudly into his phone, now speaking with someone in customer service. "I'm a platinum member. I pay good money. Why do I have to wait because she won't move? Is this how you treat your loyal customers?" His words carried down the aisle, sharp as a warning. Naomi let them float past, refusing to internalize the narrative. She'd heard it all before. On row 5, Jayla Raymond's phone continued to capture the unfolding scene. The comment feed on her live stream began to shift from curiosity to indignation. Why is this taking so long? Why is she the one under suspicion? Viewers posted their own stories, memories of being sidelined, doubted, or asked to prove themselves again and again. The digital community became Naomi's unseen allies. Jayla felt a tremor of uncertainty. Was she helping, or just bearing witness to someone else's pain? She wanted to call out, to ask the crew directly what was happening, but she held back. Instead, she whispered into her stream. Sometimes silence is the strongest statement. She doesn't have to perform for any of us. At the galley, Megan Talcott leaned against the counter, her nerves fraying. She ran a hand through her hair and spoke quietly to Ellie, the younger flight attendant. "I didn't want this to get ugly. I was just following protocol. Now it feels like everyone's watching, waiting for us to mess up." Ellie nodded, her eyes wide. "She's not like the others, though. She's just waiting, like she knows something we don't." Megan let out a long breath, guilt settling in her gut. She wished she could undo the last 20 minutes, but she felt trapped by a machine bigger than herself. Meanwhile, Logan stepped away to make a call, his voice tense. "We need a decision on 2D. Passenger has valid documentation. The other reservation is missing. If we escalate, it's going to look bad." A pause. "Yeah, I know what it looks like. That's exactly my point." Naomi sat back, letting the hum of the plane fill the silence. Her mind drifted to her daughter's graduation last spring, to the look of pride in her husband's eyes when she was named CEO, to every moment she had chosen to stay instead of leave. Those choices, she realized, had always come at a cost. Today would be no different. She felt a wave of vulnerability, wondering if anyone would understand just how much energy it took to remain composed under suspicion. She wished she could disappear, or at least be invisible, for just a moment. But she remembered her grandmother's words. Sometimes the world needs to see you stand still, so it remembers who you are. At the end of the cabin, Logan reappeared, his jaw set. "Dr. Delaney, we're delaying departure until the matter is fully resolved. I've been asked to request your cooperation one more time." Naomi looked up, her eyes calm and steady. "I am not refusing to cooperate. I am waiting, as you asked. I'm just waiting in the seat that belongs to me." Her statement was soft but final, echoing into the uneasy silence. Logan nodded, almost grateful for her clarity. "Thank you for your patience." The moment stretched, the tension winding tighter. Every movement in the cabin seemed to stop. Jala's camera lingered on Naomi, and for the first time, a few passengers met her gaze not with suspicion, but with quiet admiration. Naomi opened her journal and wrote. Not this time. She underlined it, the pressure of the pen grounding her resolve. She would not yield, not to their discomfort, not to her own fear, not to the 1,000 tiny shames that had built up over a lifetime. The whisper in her chest became a steady drumbeat. Not this time. Not again. As the plane sat motionless and the world watched, Naomi Delaney stayed exactly where she belonged. Minutes ticked by in the tight confines of the cabin, each one echoing louder than the last. The pre-flight chatter faded, replaced by a taut quietness. Passengers scrolled through their phones, checked their watches, and looked up at the overhead bins as if seeking answers in the shadows above. The low hiss of the air system became the backdrop to a scene no one dared to narrate out loud. Naomi felt the shifting currents around her, the swirl of unspoken questions. The seat across the aisle was empty, its presence a silent witness. She focused on her breath, measured and deliberate, pressing back the urge to fidget or retreat. She had learned long ago that composure wasn't just a state of mind, it was armor. But the effort it took to hold it up left a dull ache in her chest. In the forward galley, Megan Talcott watched her reflection in the shiny metal of the coffee pot. Her ponytail was a little looser now, her eyes rimmed with anxiety. Ellie stood nearby, nibbling her bottom lip, glancing down the aisle at the woman in 2D. "I wish I could just go talk to her, like a human being," Ellie whispered. "This doesn't feel right." Megan shook her head. "It's out of our hands now. Logan's waiting on instructions from operations." She paused, lowering her voice further. "But honestly, if she were someone else, if she looked like someone else, would we even be having this conversation?" Ellie nodded, the uncomfortable truth passing between them in silence. In the cabin, Logan Price hovered by the cockpit, staring at the tablet in his hand. He'd just received a system alert, an unfamiliar code flashed in red. Passenger 2D access level red, hold for directive. The message had come from an internal Artemis air channel, and it was short, abrupt, and impossible to ignore. Logan scrolled through the manifest again. Dr. Naomi Delaney. He remembered the way she'd looked at him, the patience and the quiet insistence. She was different from the difficult passengers he'd dealt with before. She didn't raise her voice or demand special treatment. She simply waited. And in that waiting, he felt exposed like every action he took was being measured. He tapped the comm and spoke softly to the captain. "We have a system hold on 2D. Ops says not to proceed until they give clearance." The captain sighed. "These holds always mean trouble. Anything I need to know?" Logan hesitated. Let's just say this passenger isn't ordinary. Meanwhile, Jayla Raymond kept her live stream running, heart racing as her viewership crept toward 50,000. She was careful to keep her commentary neutral, letting the scene unfold. She could feel the collective tension radiating from her phone, a whole audience bearing witness, the air crackling with solidarity and outrage. Her viewers posted their own stories, their own echoes of being made to wait, to prove, to swallow their pride for the comfort of others. One comment caught her eye. "She's us. We've all been in that seat, watching, waiting for someone to stand their ground." Jayla looked up from her screen. Naomi was sitting so still it was as if she'd become part of the chair. Her chin was tilted up, her eyes open but far away. She seemed both present and somewhere else, at once a woman on a plane and every woman who had ever had her right to belong questioned. Logan paced the aisle, his composure thinning with every step. He felt the eyes of the cabin on him, even when they pretended not to look. He checked the manifest again, refreshed the tablet, and reread the same directive. Wait. Do not escalate. His instinct screamed to resolve the situation, but the system had pulled the reins from his hands. Back at the gate, an Artemis Air supervisor named Karina Lane had just finished a terse phone call with operations. "We're running a flag on the Delaney situation," she told her colleague, "but I don't have details. There's some kind of internal note. Just don't make it worse." Megan peeked out from the galley and caught Logan's eye. She signaled, unsure, her mouth set in a grim line. Logan shook his head. Not yet. He was beginning to realize that no amount of apologies or polite deference would fix what was happening. The issue was no longer about a seat or a system error. It had become a test of something larger, something that ran deep through the bones of the company. Naomi shifted in her seat, feeling the throb of her own pulse. She tried to focus on the present, but her mind drifted to all the times her dignity had been considered negotiable. She remembered her father's voice, gentle but fierce. "They can't take what you don't give." She wondered if, even now, she was given too much her patience, her time, her willingness to endure. She looked down at her journal, running her thumb along the edge. There was a new tension in her hand, a tremor she refused to let others see. She squeezed her eyes shut for a second, fighting off the exhaustion that threatened to surface. She whispered silently, "Not this time. Not again." A new sound broke the silence, the beep of a message alert on Logan's tablet. He read it quickly, then exhaled, trying to hide his relief and his apprehension. He stepped forward and addressed the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. We're experiencing a brief delay due to a technical issue. We'll update you as soon as possible." As he spoke, Jayla's phone buzzed again, another notification, another repost. Her stream had caught the attention of a journalist from a major media outlet. A direct message flashed across her screen. "Can we use your footage? We'll credit you." Jayla hesitated, a surge of responsibility coursing through her. She wasn't sure she wanted the story to go viral, not because she was afraid, but because she understood the price of being seen. She glanced at Naomi, feeling a connection that was at once personal and distant. Naomi had become a symbol, her stillness, her composure, her refusal to move, but Jayla saw the fatigue behind it, the flicker of pain in her eyes. She realized that sometimes the echoes of a single moment could become the thunder of a movement. Ellie approached Megan, her voice trembling. "Should we offer her water?" "Anything." Megan shook her head. Just let her be. If she wants something, she'll ask. Naomi gazed out the window, her reflection faint in the glass. She saw herself as the world saw her, poised, impenetrable, untouchable. But beneath it all, she felt the tremors of memory and hope, the echoes of a lifetime spent waiting for permission to just exist. She wrote one last note in her journal for the moment. Echoes. Even silence has a sound. In the suspended hush of Artemis Air Flight 604, that sound grew louder, bouncing from one heart to the next, promising that what was unspoken would never again be unheard. For 10 long minutes, the airplane didn't budge. Naomi Delaney sat in her seat as if she were rooted to the earth itself, while the rest of Flight 604 floated in an uneasy limbo. Outwardly, she appeared almost serene. Inside, her thoughts circled with a restless energy, bouncing between the past and the uncertain present. Jayla Raymond kept her phone propped on her tray table, her live stream numbers growing steadily. In the scrolling sea of comments, questions kept appearing. Who is she? Why is this woman being singled out? One viewer posted a photo, a blurry conference shot. Isn't that Naomi Delaney from Airline? Another chimed in. Look up Artemis Air's board. Check for women in biotech. Jayla's audience, savvy and relentless, became detectives, on the ground, in a bright newsroom miles away. A young producer named Marcus ran a reverse image search. Within seconds, he found Naomi's LinkedIn profile. Her name glowing at the top of a resume littered with milestones, CEO of Airline, founder of Delaney Biosolutions, investor in SkyTrust Ventures, board member at Artemis Air Holdings. He flagged the result for his editor. The subject line, urgent, potential corporate angle woman at the center of viral flight video is a major Artemis Air shareholder. Back on the plane, Logan Price scrolled through a private message on his tablet, his heart pounding a little harder. Passenger 2D flag set by executive office. High value. Proceed with caution. Do not escalate unless instructed. The words chilled him. He looked up at Naomi and felt his stomach tighten. He had only wanted to do his job, to follow the system, but suddenly it seemed the system itself was shrinking from responsibility. Megan Talcott paced the galley, her fingers drumming anxiously on her clipboard. She checked the manifest again, her thoughts a frantic blur. Why hadn't anyone told her who Naomi was? Why did it feel like she was being set up to fail? She peeked into the cabin, seeing Naomi unmoved, and felt a surge of embarrassment. She didn't know whether to apologize or to hope Naomi never remembered her name. The unnamed white passenger, now resigned to a seat in economy, still seethed. He messaged his travel coordinator, asking for an upgrade or a complaint form, but no one replied. He turned to glare toward the front of the plane, still convinced an injustice had been done to him. Not by him. Naomi shifted slightly, stretching her legs beneath the seat. Her mind wandered back to the first time she had been underestimated. She was a young postdoc then, asked to repeat an experiment a third time because her results were unusual. She'd smiled politely, repeated the experiment, and proved them wrong again. But she remembered the way the professor never looked her in the eye, the way her name was always the last called at every conference. She looked down now at the leather-bound journal resting in her lap, at the faint indentations left by her pen. Each mark was a testimony, each word a defense against forgetting. In the front row, a man in a navy suit had opened his laptop and was furiously typing. He glanced between Naomi and his screen, searching for her name in press releases and board minutes. As the truth dawned on him, his posture changed. He closed his laptop quietly and sat back, as if shrinking from the history he was now a witness to. Logan approached Naomi's seat again, his expression different this time, less stern, more careful. He spoke quietly. "Dr. Delaney, I just wanted to let you know we're waiting on further direction from the executive team. Is there anything I can get you while we wait?" Naomi studied his face for a moment before answering. "No, thank you, Mr. Price, but I would like a copy of the incident log once this is over." He nodded, caught off guard by her request but unwilling to challenge it. He wondered what else she knew, what other requests she might make if pressed. Jayla's phone buzzed as a direct message appeared on her screen. "Hi, this is Tessa Huxley with Artemis Air Corporate Communications. Can you confirm the passenger's name in 2D?" Jayla read it twice, torn between the urge to protect Naomi's privacy and the instinct to help the story reach a wider audience. She typed back, "I believe her name is Dr. Naomi Delaney," within minutes. Tessa's response came, "Thank you for your help. Please keep this confidential for now." Meanwhile, the Artemis Air headquarters in Dallas was in an uproar. A risk management analyst flagged the situation for the CEO, and within minutes, a crisis team had gathered. Emails flew, phones buzzed, and old audit reports were pulled up. Someone at the conference table whispered, "That's Delaney." The Naomi Delaney. Heads nodded. "She owns almost 10% of our voting shares. If this goes public, it won't just be a PR issue. On board." Naomi felt the stirrings of a new awareness rippling through the plane. The flight attendants were now more deferential, offering water and quiet reassurances to the business class cabin. Passengers who had glared at her before now avoided her gaze. The unnamed man in economy checked his phone for news updates, growing uneasy as the seat dispute became less about his comfort and more about the company's reputation. Jayla switched her phone camera to selfie mode for a moment, whispering to her audience, "Y'all, she's not just anybody. She's a board member, a biotech CEO. They picked the wrong one today." The chat exploded. News anchors started following her feed. Hashtags trended. Naomi, meanwhile, felt the weariness settle into her bones. But she also sensed the power in holding her ground. She wasn't looking for vindication. She wanted something bigger, a change, a reckoning, maybe even an end to these moments for those who would come after her. Logan returned, this time with a colleague in tow. "Dr. Delaney, is there anyone you'd like us to notify or any accommodations we can provide?" Naomi shook her head. "Just transparency. And, when this is over, your word that you'll review your protocols." Logan nodded, his eyes lowered. He knew he was out of his depth, and he wasn't sure whether to apologize or thank her for not escalating further. Jayla angled her phone toward the aisle, recording Logan's face as he walked away, pale and thoughtful. The live stream chat offered encouragement and gratitude for Naomi's calm. Jayla's own chest ached with the sense that she was capturing something historic, something necessary. In the stillness, Naomi turned a fresh page in her journal. She wrote, "Every moment of doubt is a test. Every moment of patience is a lesson." She looked out the window, watching the sky soften from gold to twilight blue, and she let herself imagine a world where none of this was necessary. For the first time since she boarded, Naomi allowed herself to hope that this moment could become a turning point, not just for herself, but for the many who would someday be asked, "Who is she?" And finally, the answer would matter. Naomi felt the change before anyone announced it. The mood in the cabin shifted from wary curiosity to outright tension as whispers rippled from row to row. Even the air seemed heavier. It wasn't only the long delay or the hum of unanswered questions, it was the anticipation of something about to break open. Through the front curtain came a new figure. She walked with practiced authority. A tailored navy suit, a badge clipped to her lapel, Tessa Huxley, Regional Director of Customer Affairs, Artemis Air. Her presence was calm, crisp, and careful. A flight attendant quickly cleared a path and Tessa stopped at Naomi's seat, lowering herself to eye level. "Dr. Delaney, thank you for your patience and composure. I'm Tessa Huxley. I want to personally apologize for the inconvenience and confusion you have experienced. Our team is prepared to move you to first class, provide you with any refreshments or amenities you require, and credit your account for the disruption. Please accept our sincerest apologies." Naomi looked at Tessa, searching her face for something genuine beneath the polished performance. She saw the PR training, the layers of caution, the urgent calculation behind every word. Naomi's voice was soft but unwavering. "Ms. Huxley, I appreciate your efforts, but you cannot upgrade someone already above your ceiling." The words cut through the practiced empathy like glass. Tessa blinked, momentarily at a loss. Naomi went on, her tone gentle but absolute. "I do not want a complimentary drink or a lounge pass. I want the official cabin recordings and a written acknowledgement of the incident. And I want a commitment from Artemis Air to review your protocols for handling seat disputes." Around them, the tension crystallized. Passengers looked away, but their ears tuned in. Jayla's camera captured every syllable. In economy. The unnamed man who'd challenged Naomi's seat listened, his bravado now crumbling into embarrassment. Megan and Ellie watched from the galley, exchanging glances of awe and anxiety. Tessa straightened her blazer, recalibrating her approach. "Of course, Dr. Delaney. We will ensure all documentation is provided. We will also review the events with our management team. Is there any way I can make you more comfortable while you wait for the paperwork?" Naomi shook her head. "I am comfortable in the seat I paid for. I am not here for comfort. I am here for clarity." The honesty in her answer unsettled Tessa, who was accustomed to placating the angry, not listening to the resolute. Tessa took a careful breath. "Dr. Delaney, on behalf of Artemis Air, we deeply regret that your experience has not met our standards." Naomi closed her journal with a soft snap. "I'm not here for regret. I'm here for accountability. Your standards are not my concern. The way you treat your passengers, especially the ones who do not fit your assumptions, is—" A hush swept the cabin. In the row behind, Jayla wiped a tear from her cheek, stunned by the dignity of Naomi's words. The live stream chat lit up. "She's changing the script. This is bigger than a seat. This is history." Tessa nodded, her facade slipping just a little. "Understood. I will return with the documentation as soon as possible." Naomi nodded, then added, "Bring your supervisor as well. And bring the names of every person who made a decision about my seat." Tessa hesitated, eyes wide. "Yes, Dr. Delaney, I will do so." As Tessa walked away, her steps less certain, the entire cabin seemed to exhale. For the first time, some passengers met Naomi's gaze not with suspicion, but with an unfamiliar respect. In the quiet that followed, Naomi felt an unexpected sadness. She didn't want to fight. She didn't want to make a scene. She wanted to fly home, to return to her family, to write in her journal and finish her book before midnight. But the cost of dignity, she realized, was often paid in moments like this, when one person refused to settle for less than truth. Logan returned to check on her, his voice lower than before. "Dr. Delaney, if there is anything we can do, please let me know." His eyes flickered with concern, not just for his job, but for the woman who had quietly shifted the weight of the entire flight. Naomi met his eyes, searching for remorse or learning, not pity. "Just remember this feeling, Mr. Price. The next time you doubt someone's right to belong, remember this moment." He nodded, chastened, and moved away, in the galley. Megan closed her eyes, replaying every decision she'd made since boarding. She felt the cold prickle of shame realizing how quickly she had judged, how carelessly she had followed the system without question. Jayla's viewers climbed past 70,000. The chat was a river of support and outrage. Jayla looked at Naomi and wondered how many times in her own life she'd accepted a quiet injustice for the sake of peace. She whispered into her phone, "This is what resistance looks like. It's patient, it's polite, and it's unmovable." In the quiet, Naomi turned to a blank page and wrote, "No apology replaces accountability. I will not settle for regret. I will not trade truth for comfort." The words steadied her, gave shape to her resolve. Her phone buzzed in her bag, a message from her daughter, "Mom, are you okay? I'm seeing you online." Naomi smiled softly, her heart aching with pride and worry. She typed back, "I'm fine. I'm exactly where I need to be." She closed her eyes, remembering the days when her own mother told her, "Apologies are empty unless they change something." She let that lesson wrap around her now, warm and necessary. The overhead lights dimmed as the last rays of daylight faded beyond the airport windows. Naomi folded her shawl, settling deeper into her seat, the hum of possibility all around her. There would be no apologies tonight. There would be no easy comfort, only truth, witnessed and spoken. And in that truth, Naomi found rest. The energy in the cabin had shifted. The sense of waiting, of teetering on the edge of something irreversible, pulsed in the narrow aisles. Naomi sat quietly in 2D, her hands folded atop her journal, her eyes tracing the patterns in the upholstery. The hum of Artemis Air Flight 604 was now more than mechanical. It was a living, breathing presence, alive with tension and anticipation. It was only a few minutes before Tessa Huxley returned. This time, she brought another figure, a tall man in a dark suit, silver badge clipped to his pocket. He introduced himself as David Kern, Senior Operations Manager. Behind him, a younger woman in a crisp blazer held a thin folder, her eyes darting from Naomi to Tessa, searching for cues on how to act. Tessa spoke first, her voice softer now, stripped of rehearsed pleasantries. "Dr. Delaney, as promised, we have the preliminary documentation of today's events. Mr. Kern is here to address any procedural questions you may have. We understand that your concerns go beyond this single incident." Naomi accepted the folder, flipping it open with practiced efficiency. She scanned the printed logs, her brow furrowing. It listed times, names, actions, but the narrative was sanitized, every entry scrubbed of the unease that had actually filled the cabin. Naomi closed the folder. Her voice was calm and quiet, but every ear in business class strained to hear. I see you've documented the actions, but not the assumptions. Let me help." She set her journal on the tray table, turning it so Tessa and David could see. She read aloud, each line precise. March 12th, Artemis Air Flight 223. Black female executive asked to verify boarding pass 3 times, despite platinum status. April 8th, Artemis Air, Terminal Lounge. 2 black women told their upgrades were unavailable, only to see those seats filled by other passengers moments later. June 2nd, Artemis Air, Gate B4. Black medical doctor flagged for random security check after clearing pre-check. She paused, letting the list settle. These are only a few. I've logged others. The pattern is clear. Your system, your staff, your protocols, they do not recognize people like me as belonging here unless we fit a narrow picture of who belongs. David Kern's face was pale. He tried to interject. "Dr. Delaney, we handle thousands of passengers each day. Mistakes happen. There's no intentional bias." Naomi looked at him evenly. "Patterns do not lie. Mr. Kern, if a mistake happens once, it is random. If it happens again and again and again to people who look like me, but not to those who look like you, it is not random. It is design, whether you admit it or not." A murmur rippled through the cabin. Passengers who had feigned indifference now watched openly. Jayla's live stream caught Naomi's every word, her voice clear and unwavering. The comment section exploded with stories. "This happened to me in Miami. My sister was bumped from first class in LA. I work airline staff, we all know it's true." Tessa struggled to respond. "Dr. Delaney, we're committed to inclusivity and fairness. We will look into these incidents and provide a formal response. I assure you, Artemis Air takes this seriously." Naomi nodded, her patience the product of years spent teaching rooms full of people who did not want to listen. "I hope you understand, Ms. Huxley, that I'm not seeking compensation. I am seeking change. You can only fix what you're willing to see." She turned a page in her journal and wrote, "Change starts with seeing." David glanced at Tessa, who was already typing notes into her phone. The young woman in the blazer shuffled her papers, her hands trembling. She offered, We can initiate a review panel for these incidents. Would you be willing to consult?" Naomi paused, considering. She saw a flash of genuine curiosity in the woman's face, and it softened her. "I'll consider it," she replied, "but only if you commit to transparency. No more hidden logs, no more sanitized reports." Jayla sat forward in her seat, heart pounding. She could feel the shift, the sense that something was finally moving. She caught Naomi's eye, offering a small nod of encouragement. Naomi gave a faint smile in return. In the galley, Megan listened to the conversation through the thin curtain, guilt and relief warring inside her. She wished she could apologize, to say she saw it now the ways she had been trained to doubt, to question, to uphold a system that quietly erased people at every turn. David cleared his throat, voice subdued. "Dr. Delaney, on behalf of Artemis Air, I apologize for the repeated failures you have experienced. I can't change the past, but I will escalate your concerns to our executive board immediately." Naomi met his eyes. "That is all I ask. Escalate the truth, not just the apology." She closed her journal with a gentle firmness and settled back in her seat. The confrontation had left her drained, but not defeated. For the first time, she allowed herself to feel pride, not just for standing her ground, but for naming the pattern in a way that could not be ignored. Jayla's live stream viewers soared past 100,000. The comment feed flooded with thanks, with names and dates and cities, a collective record of every time someone had been asked to wait, to move, to accept less. The business cabin, once divided by suspicion and protocol, was now united in a heavy silence. It was the silence that comes after the first crack in a wall, the moment before a flood. As Tessa, David, and the young woman left her row, Naomi whispered to herself, "Let this be the beginning." She wrote it down, her handwriting small but certain. The beginning is always quiet. The pattern is what shouts, outside the window. The airport tarmac glowed under floodlights, and Naomi knew she had done what she came to do. She had forced them to see the pattern, and in seeing it, to reckon with it. The world beyond Flight 604 began to close in, while Naomi Delaney remained a still point in the storm of the business cabin. Her story rushed outward at the speed of a tap and a swipe. Jayla Raymond's live stream had crossed 150,000 viewers and now trended at the very top of social platforms. Each time Naomi's calm voice reached the mic, it was echoed, quoted, and amplified by people Naomi had never met, people who suddenly saw themselves in her restraint and her resolve. In the back galley, Megan Talcott leaned against the metal counter, her hands trembling. She'd begun the day reciting airline policies and scanning boarding passes, trusting the rules more than her gut. Now she found herself listening to Jayla's broadcast in one earbud, fighting the urge to run out and offer Naomi a real apology, not the empty, rehearsed kind, but the honest admission that she should have done better, seen more, trusted first. In Artemis Air's downtown Dallas headquarters, phones rang off the hook. Karina Lane sat in a small glass office with a crisis team. Screens lining one wall. On one display, the numbers scrolled upward, live stream views, trending hashtags, news alerts. On another, a TV anchor summarized the situation in practiced tones. A dispute over a seat has become a question of race, power, and corporate culture. Artemis Air is under fire tonight after a black biotech CEO, Dr. Naomi Delaney, was repeatedly challenged about her right to fly business class, despite holding a valid ticket and major equity in the company. Karina closed her eyes for a moment, exhausted. The airline's executive team was scrambling statements drafted and deleted, lawyers arguing over liability, PR strategists rehearsing talking points. No one wanted to take responsibility, but everyone sensed the cost of not doing so would be far higher. On the plane, Jayla's phone vibrated with media requests. CNN, MSNBC, The Root, and several digital publications all wanted to use her footage, or at least a quote. Jayla hesitated, weighing her next steps. This was bigger than her, bigger than the viral moment. She reached for Naomi's gaze as if to ask permission, and found in her calm a silent answer, tell the truth. Logan Price walked the aisle with a hollow, uncertain feeling. The crew had stopped making excuses. Passengers whispered openly about the standoff in business class, speculating on who Naomi really was and what would happen when the plane finally took off. Logan checked his tablet for updates from operations, but the only message that came was a warning to maintain professionalism and defer all questions to corporate crisis. At the front of the cabin, Tessa Huxley and David Kern huddled, fielding calls from Dallas. Tessa's face had lost its careful polish. Now she looked simply tired. "We need a statement." David, and we need to make this right before it spins further out of control." David agreed, but his voice was thin with frustration. The board's divided. Some want to blame the manifest. Some want to blame the staff. Nobody wants to address the obvious. He glanced toward Naomi's seat, then lowered his head. Jayla lifted her phone, framing her face with Naomi visible behind her. "If you're just joining," she said to her audience, Dr. Naomi Delaney stood her ground, not with anger, but with facts and patience. And now the whole world's watching to see if Artemis Air will do more than say sorry. The chat flooded with support, and also with calls for boycotts, accountability, change. The air in the cabin was electric, the charge of old wounds reopened by new light. In row 1, the man in the Navy suit checked his news feed. Headlines had started to roll out Artemis Air faces discrimination scandal. BLACKCEO confronts Airline on bias. Board member challenges system from her own seat. He watched the faces of fellow passengers, each of them caught between discomfort and awe, unsure whether to intervene or retreat into their screens. Megan finally summoned the courage to walk toward business class. She stopped just beside Naomi's row, her voice barely above a whisper. "Dr. Delaney, I want to apologize. Not the corporate way. The real way. I was wrong to doubt you. I'm sorry." Naomi looked at her, warmth flickering in her gaze. "Thank you." "Megan, it takes courage to see yourself clearly. I hope you keep doing it for every passenger who comes after me." Megan's shoulders relaxed a little. She nodded and slipped back to the galley, her apology not absolving her guilt, but transforming it into purpose. Back in Dallas, Artemis Air's CEO sat at the head of a long conference table, tapping his pen. "We need to get ahead of this. Naomi Delaney is not just a customer, she's an owner. If she speaks publicly, we risk lawsuits, investor revolt, and real regulatory heat. Who can reach her? Who does she trust?" Karina spoke up, her voice steady. "Maybe we need to listen before we talk." The CIO stared, caught by the rarest thing in the room, honesty on the plane. Naomi felt her own phone buzz, a message from her attorney. Saw the stream. "Don't say yes to anything yet. We're monitoring." Naomi smiled softly, not with triumph, but with a quiet sense of relief. She'd done what she could. The story was now bigger than her. It belonged to everyone watching, everyone remembering, everyone who had ever been told to wait in silence. Jayla ended her live stream with a soft, resonant note. Change doesn't always shout. Sometimes it sits quietly, asks for receipts, and waits until the world finally listens. She powered down her phone, her heart pounding with the weight of responsibility and hope. Outside, night had fallen on the runway. The plane was still grounded, but inside, nothing was still. Even the air seemed to vibrate with possibility. Naomi closed her journal. She leaned back, eyes closed, breathing in the space she had claimed, not just for herself, but for so many others. She knew the chaos had only begun, but for the first time, she did not feel alone. Her patience had become a beacon, her resolve a rallying point. Somewhere in the business cabin, a passenger began to clap, hesitant but sincere. The sound rippled forward, cautious at first, then swelling until it filled the narrow space. Naomi opened her eyes, surprised. She smiled a quiet, knowing smile, both for herself and for the world that was finally watching. Stillness wrapped the cabin like a soft, weighted blanket. Time felt altered, elongated by tension and held breath. Naomi Delaney sat motionless in 2D, not as a statue, but as the calm center of a shifting world. The cabin lights glowed in soft gold, and somewhere far in the back, a baby fussed, but no one shushed it. All eyes lingered in moments on Naomi, some discreet, some bold, all uncertain. Logan Price stood near the galley, half listening to updates from operations, half watching Naomi as if he was seeing her for the first time. He realized, suddenly, that leadership did not always arrive with a badge or a title. Sometimes it entered quietly, waited patiently, and transformed a room without raising its voice. Naomi gazed at the closed journal in her lap, thumb resting on the edge, feeling every thud of her own pulse. Her mind was crowded with voices, past and present, her late mother's gentle guidance, her daughter's hope, the countless women she'd mentored who'd whispered, "I'm tired of fighting, but I don't want to give up." She felt them all beside her, invisible, holding her steady as the world outside their seat spun on its axis. Her phone buzzed again, her attorney's number. She considered answering, but let it rest. This was not a legal moment, not yet. This was something more elemental. She looked out the window at the flicker of runway lights, at the workers in reflective vests, at the night sky swallowing the horizon. She was aware that, here and now, her only power was her presence. A passenger in 1A turned and tried to catch Naomi's attention. "I just want to say thank you," he said softly, "for what you're doing, for not leaving." His voice was shy, not performative. Naomi nodded, her eyes warm. She answered quietly, "Don't thank me for surviving a system built to erase me. Thank the silence that exposed it." The man swallowed hard, nodded, and turned away, visibly moved. Jayla Raymond watched, her phone in her lap now, her hands trembling with emotion. She realized she no longer needed to record every moment. The story was already alive, already multiplying in the hearts of those present. Jayla saw her own life reflected in Naomi's stillness, the job she'd lost, the rooms where she'd been too visible or too invisible, the longing for a moment when just being would be enough. Jayla scrolled through messages and saw one from her mother. "I'm proud of you for standing witness. Remember to rest when you can." Naomi felt her eyes sting, and she let the feeling pass through her, not ashamed of the vulnerability. She remembered her daughter's first heartbreak, the night they'd stayed up late talking. She'd said, sometimes, "What breaks you open is what sets you free." Megan Talcott peeked from the galley and watched Naomi in a new light. Megan felt regret, yes, but also respect. She thought about her own small fears, the many times she'd stayed silent, and she promised herself that the next time the system nudged her to doubt, she would ask why. David Kern and Tessa Huxley huddled in the front, their crisis notes now secondary to the reality forming before them. They had seen angry passengers, sobbing children, and boisterous celebrities, but they had never seen an entire cabin silenced by the unwavering presence of one quiet woman. Ellie, the young flight attendant, gathered up her courage and approached Naomi with a glass of water. "I know you didn't ask, but maybe you need this," she said, her voice soft. Naomi accepted it, gratitude in her eyes. "Thank you," Naomi replied, her smile gentle, "for seeing me." Ellie's cheeks flushed, and she walked away feeling changed. In the business cabin, the atmosphere had shifted from discomfort to reverence. The once skeptical passengers now sat with backs straight, glancing between their phones and Naomi, waiting for cues on how to behave. It was as if they had become part of a sacred moment, a reckoning that did not need shouting to be real. Naomi opened her journal to a blank page and paused, letting her pen hover. Her thoughts were not neat or orderly. They came as memories and fragments. She wrote, "Stillness reveals what noise can't hide. Truth doesn't always need a witness, but it needs a place to rest." She drew a quiet breath and let herself remember her late husband's hands steady, patient, never hurried, the way he'd taught their daughter to tie her shoes, insisting that no matter how many times she failed, there was no shame in trying again. Naomi felt the fatigue in her bones and the ache behind her eyes. She wondered, for a moment, if all this waiting was futile. What if nothing changed? What if, by the next flight, some other woman sat where she sat, faced what she faced, and found no support, but another part of her, deeper and wiser, understood that change never began with thunder. It began with the refusal to move. She realized that being still in the face of injustice was not surrender. It was the ground on which new stories could be built. Logan walked by and met Naomi's eyes, searching for forgiveness, for understanding. Naomi held his gaze and nodded once, not as an absolution, but as a promise that he could do better. The business cabin, for one strange, beautiful moment, felt united not by comfort or convenience, but by the shared awareness that they had witnessed the start of something that would ripple far beyond these seats. Naomi closed her journal, leaned her head back, and let her eyes drift shut. The chaos on the ground, the trending stories, the panicked conference calls, none of it mattered in this moment. Here, in the stillness, the truth waited, unbothered by apologies or offers. It simply existed, finally seen. The lights dimmed another notch. The captain's voice, calm and practiced, came over the PA. "Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for your continued patience. We are awaiting further instructions from ground control. We appreciate your understanding." Naomi listened, her lips curving in the faintest of smiles. Understanding, she thought, was the only way forward. As sleep threatened, Naomi whispered to herself, "The truth is not always loud, but it always arrives." And for the first time all day, she let herself rest, knowing that her stillness had already changed the world. The curtain between first and business class was pulled back slowly, drawing every eye in the cabin. The calm authority of the moment was broken by the deliberate footsteps of three figures who entered the business cabin with the measured confidence of people accustomed to control. Leading the group was Louise Hartley, Regional Director of Customer Operations, a woman whose every move spoke of power tempered by diplomacy. She wore a dark navy suit, her hair pulled back into a tight bun, and her expression was unreadable. Behind her walked two others, a woman in a sharply tailored blazer clutching a leather-bound notebook, and a man whose every gesture exuded the precision of a legal professional. The trio moved as if crossing into a territory that demanded utmost respect, and they were met by a stillness that unsettled even them. Naomi Delaney remained seated in 2D, her posture impeccable, her gaze steady. She watched them approach and gestured toward the jump seat across from her. "Please, sit." The silence that followed was heavy but electric, charged with unspoken histories and expectations. Louise took the seat, the other two settling nearby, their eyes flicking between Naomi and one another. "Ms. Hartley began, her voice measured. "Dr. Delaney, I'm here on behalf of Artemis Air's executive team. We have reviewed the incident and the growing attention it has received. First, I want to apologize for the distress caused." Naomi inclined her head slightly, but her voice was calm and resolute. "Apologies are a start, but they do not undo the harm done. I am not here seeking compensation or comfort. I'm here demanding accountability and change." The legal advisor leaned forward, pen poised. "We understand your concerns and are prepared to take them seriously. Please, elaborate." Naomi opened her journal and spread out a series of notes timelines, records of similar incidents, emails, witness accounts. She spoke clearly, each word deliberate, weaving a narrative not just about one flight or one seat, but about a systemic pattern of exclusion. "This is not an isolated event," she said. "It is part of a larger structure that systematically questions the legitimacy of people like me. The assumptions, the delays, the refusals, these are barriers disguised as protocols." Louise listened, her eyes never leaving Naomi's face. "We acknowledge the gravity of your claims and the need for systemic review." Naomi paused, then added, "Acknowledgement is not enough. I want a public commitment. I want transparent audits, staff retraining, and a seat at the table where these policies are made." The PR woman shifted uncomfortably but nodded. "Those are reasonable demands. We can discuss implementation." Naomi's gaze was unwavering. "Discussing is not acting. I need to see real steps, timelines, and consequences for those who uphold biased practices." A silence settled, broken only by the quiet scribbling of notes. The legal advisor looked at Louise, then back to Naomi. "Dr. Delaney, your stature and influence are well known. Your involvement could help drive meaningful change not just here, but across the industry." Naomi met their eyes steadily. "I will lend my voice, but only if it is used to amplify those who have been silenced, not to protect those who perpetuate harm." The weight of her words lingered. Louise took a breath and said, "We are committed to making Artemis Air a leader in equity and inclusion. Your courage today has brought this to light." Naomi closed her journal gently. "Then let us begin." Behind her, passengers whispered, some wiping tears, others nodding silently. Jayla's camera captured the moment, the quiet dismantling of barriers from a seat that once symbolized exclusion. As the meeting concluded, Naomi stood gracefully. She looked at each person, her voice soft but firm. "Thank you for listening. Now, it is time to act." Louise nodded. "You will hear from us soon." Naomi turned back to her seat, the cabin lights dimming as the plane prepared to push back. The tension had not dissolved, but it had transformed into a promise that the reckoning was only beginning. The final moments aboard Artemis Air Flight 604 were unlike any Naomi Delaney had ever experienced. The plane sat idle at the gate, engines humming softly but unmoving, while inside, the atmosphere had shifted from confrontation to quiet reverence. Naomi folded her shawl neatly across her lap and tucked her journal into her leather satchel. The weight of the day, the battles fought silently and fiercely, settled around her like an invisible cloak. She felt eyes on her, not with suspicion or doubt, but with respect, some tentative, others openly admiring. Passengers who had earlier exchanged uncomfortable glances now whispered words of support, sharing stories of their own struggles, their own moments of quiet resistance. Jayla Raymond lowered her phone for the first time since the incident began. She smiled softly, catching Naomi's gaze from several rows away. Naomi nodded in return, a simple gesture, but one heavy with meaning. At the front of the cabin, Megan Talcott stood by the galley, a small smile breaking through the tension. She had replayed every moment in her mind, feeling both regret and hope. Watching Naomi now, she understood the power of seeing someone truly belong. Logan Price moved through the aisle, his uniform pressed but his expression changed. He offered Naomi a respectful nod. She returned it, silently thanking him for the moments he'd tried to listen. The flight attendant, Ellie, approached Naomi with a gentle offer. "If you need any assistance leaving the plane, please let me know." Naomi's smile was warm. "Thank you, Ellie. Your kindness means more than you realize." Outside, the sun dipped low behind the terminal buildings, casting long shadows over the tarmac. The cabin lights dimmed as the plane's final boarding announcement crackled through the speakers. Naomi stood, smooth and deliberate in her movements. She gathered her belongings and made her way down the aisle, each step measured and sure. Passengers watched as she passed, some standing to offer her room, others quietly rising to their feet in silent salute. At the jet bridge, Artemis Air staff lined up, not as adversaries but as witnesses. They stood with folded arms and bowed heads, a collective acknowledgement of what had transpired. Naomi stepped onto the jet bridge, feeling the cool air of the terminal wash over her. She paused, turning for a brief moment to look back at the plane, a vessel of many stories, one now forever changed. Her phone buzzed once more, a message from her attorney. "We're ready when you are." She typed back simply, "I'm ready." At the terminal exit, a small group of reporters and camera crews waited, tipped off by Jayla's viral stream. Flashbulbs popped, voices called out her name, but Naomi walked steadily forward, choosing silence over spectacle. A young journalist approached, microphone extended. "Dr. Delaney, what message do you have for the airline and for others who face similar challenges?" Naomi paused, then spoke with quiet authority. "This isn't about me. It's about every person who has ever been made to feel invisible or unworthy. Change begins when we refuse to be silent, when we claim our space, when we hold systems accountable not with anger, but with unwavering truth." Her words rippled through the crowd, carried instantly across social media and news outlets. Hashtags trended, conversations sparked, policies were reviewed. Artemis Air issued a formal commitment to equity and transparency. Days later, Naomi sat in her office overlooking the city skyline, her journal open before her. She reflected on the journey, the fatigue, the frustration, the moments of hope. She wrote a final entry: "Power does not always roar. Sometimes it waits quietly, demanding to be seen. I stood still, and the world moved." Her phone rang. It was a call from Artemis Air's CEO, seeking dialogue and partnership. Naomi smiled, knowing the work was just beginning. But for now, she rested in the knowledge that today, in Seat 2D, she had rewritten the rules. Naomi Delaney's story is a reminder that power doesn't always roar. It often waits quietly in the face of injustice, demanding to be seen and heard. Her courage to stand firm, without raising her voice, exposes the painful reality of systemic discrimination that still lingers in everyday moments, even at 35,000 feet. This is not just a story about one seat on one flight. It's a call to recognize the countless invisible battles fought by those too often erased or overlooked. It's a demand for respect, accountability, and real change. If Naomi's calm strength moved you, if her story reminded you of someone you know, or even yourself, please like this video, share it far and wide, and subscribe to our channel. Together, we will keep telling stories that matter, stories that break the silence and build a world where everyone belongs. Thank you for watching. We're just getting started.